Hi, my name is Mike, and I'm here to read a comic. And today's comic is The Flash, issue number 217, dated September, probably 73, 1972. Okay, so it's a 1972 issue. Uh, the cover features 5 Flashes. Each of them are kind of disagreeing with each other. One thing that is noticeable on the cover, and it's also seen in the story, is that 4 of these Flashes are real jerks. So you can kind of always tell who the real Flash was by him being kind of a decent person. And the other 4 Flashes were kind of jerks. I'm not quite sure what they're trying to say about Barry Allen and his thinking process. Because these 4 Flashes are actually past images of him. But it offers kind of an interesting psychological perspective. I thought it was pretty good it offered a good psychological perspective. I thought also there were actually a few futuristic things in this. For example, there's basically a 1972 version of Chat GPT, but kind of like in physical form. I guess kind of like Dr. No in AI, if you remember that movie. That was a great movie. But the real winner of this issue is actually the B story, because it's really the last great Green Lantern, Green Arrow story from Denny O'Neal and Neal Adams. And this is a 3-part arc. It's really a terrific story. The art is amazing. The emotion is amazing. It's very much a Marvel written story. So it's kind of interesting to read these 2 DC characters in basically a Marvel comic book, because it kind of has that feel of a Marvel comic. So anyway, I'm going to go into the first story, The Flash, which I did find enjoyable. So we see a tank here, one of the crime tanks. And that was a big thing by Len Wein. Len Wein always had these kind of fantasies, I guess they're kind of kid fantasies, of being in control of this unstoppable tank and just causing havoc in the city and just robbing banks and all that. Len Wein incorporated a lot of that into his stories. And he does so here. So it looks like there's a lot of havoc going on in Central City. Looks like a little kid is about to be squashed by a huge hunk of building structure. The Flash sees it. He goes into action. And before I turn the page, I'm going to say the creative team is Len Wein, who's a comic book legend. He was obviously best known for creating Wolverine, but he did a lot of great things in comic book history. The artist is Irv Novak, who had a long run on the title. Irv was basically DC's kind of in-house style guy. What DC wanted their superhero comic books to look a certain way, following the kind of like the comic style of the company. Irv Novak was usually that guy. He drew very lanky characters. He was certainly a good artist. He wasn't a great artist, but he was a good one. And he did do a lot of iconic imagery for both Batman and the Flash. So anyway, turns out the Flash saves the kid. He still has the kid in his arms going at super speed. He sees a hunk of building falling, and it's going to flatten about 3 pedestrians here. However, Flash's speed effect pulls them into the vacuum, so they're saved, somewhat clumsily, but nevertheless they appreciate it. They're still fashionably dressed. That was one of the things about Irv Novak's comics, was that they were very contemporary looking. So he he definitely looked in the Sears catalog to make sure to see what people were wearing at the time, and that's what he drew. And yeah, I kind of liked his artwork. So anyway, the Flash is kind of figuring out what to do about this menace. I think they call it the Dreadnought. So basically, this crime tank is causing a lot of problems. Flash is kind of thinking about what to do because the tank got away. Flash does something very odd. He basically starts rebuilding the buildings from scratch. Again, this is a very childlike thing. Barry Allen, to my knowledge, is not necessarily skilled at doing this, nor should he be. Honestly, he didn't cause the structure damages, and and why should he break the unions? Honestly, just let the constructor fill out an insurance claim. So nevertheless, Barry Allen, hey, he has these union busting he has these union busting abilities, which I'm sure the bosses of the comic book companies loved. So anyway, one of the people looking at the spectacle of the Flash is this professor, and it turns out this professor is also Barry Allen's father-in-law, and so this professor doesn't know that Barry Allen is the Flash, but he does know Barry Allen, who is the Flash, and this will cause problems later on. The old guy, he's a professor, so he's doing professorly things. And it turns out that he has this device, which he calls Fred. And it's called a functional recorder of encyclopedic data. So basically, this guy has chat GBT right here. Or as I had mentioned earlier, the device from AI, Dr. No, he knows everything. So this is kind of an interesting nod where this is AI, and we're not actually that far off from this. If anyone has any experience with Chat GPT, they usually give you pretty good answers. Same way the professor here, he's talking to this artificial intelligence. He's talking about the Flash, and he's telling him, listen, I specifically noticed that the Flash was doing these things. The artificial intelligence says that it is not humanly possible to do the things that you're describing. So then they're trying to resolve this issue of this very intelligent professor observations, and what this AI knows is what's physically possible. So I think the AI comes up with a really kind of a scatterbrained idea that basically there are 5 Flashes. They're all in costume, and they all communicate through walkie-talkie. And when something's going on in one part of the town, they'll signal to the other one, and that one will go into action. And this is why it seems like the Flash can crisscross the city so easily. So the AI has this harebrained idea, and he's selling it to the professor. And this is the professor who created the AI. And the professor is somewhat skeptical. However, he keeps his mind open that this stupid ass backwards idea from the AI is credible enough to investigate. So the professor is not going to dismiss this idea out of hand. So that's kind of the contention of the story. And so the professor wants to see how things play out. However, the AI realizes that it might be wrong. And the consequences for being wrong apparently is this professor totally dismantling this unit, which is obviously not what would be the logical thing to do. The logical thing would be, if things didn't work out, maybe ask the AI, where did you go wrong? And we can fix this for the future. Rather than being, if I give him one wrong, bad answer, it's over for me. So he has to reverse engineer reality. He has to create a reality where his hypothesis would exist. And so she's trying to game the system here, just so he can avoid saying he's wrong to the professor, which again is kind of human. People go to great lengths to avoid admitting they were wrong about things. So anyway, it turns out the AI is able to formulate a way of generating these 4 extra flashes. So anyway, he captures the flash in his thoughts, and then suddenly something happens to the flash that he notices, that the flash kind of notices it, but he doesn't know what it is. So then he stops running, and then he's immediately hit by the 4 other flashes that were behind him. And it's kind of funny because some of these guys are kind of really rude. He called one of the Flash a clumsy idiot, and the other Flash is like, "Hey, back off, motherfucker." So these versions of the Flash are not particularly nice, and so anyway, they're trying to figure out what's going on. So right now we have 5 Flashes. One of them is being civil and trying to organize things. The others are just kind of insulting one another, or they're just kind of being whiny, me types. So they're fighting amongst themselves, and it looks like the one that we would designate the real Flash, he's kind of being more mature and taking command. So that's the one thing that separates him from the other Flashes, is that the real one is a bit more mature, whereas sort of these other Flashes are kind of dicks. But nevertheless, they have to work together to figure out what reality they belong in. So we see the first Flash, since he seems to have more command of what's going on, obviously, he takes the lead. The other Flashes follow. And Flash goes home, and he's greeted by his wife Iris, who's also aware that Barry is the Flash. So this is a husband and wife coupling, where the wife is aware of the crime-fighting husband's, hobby, and so she's definitely kind of she's an enabler, but she's a willing one. Nevertheless, she sees the 4 other Flashes. She's really confused, because they're all Barry, even though some of them are being really jerks about it. I'm not sure. Iris might be concerned about getting gangbanged here, because these 4 other Flashes look like they would go for that. Nevertheless, mature Flash kind of calms Irene down, saying, "Listen, for whatever reason, I've become a knuckleheaded Neanderthal in the past, because these 4 other Flashes, they're actually past images of me come back to life, animated. So they're sort of like, imagine if a photo would become animated. But for some reason, when Flash is in the present, he's like, this calm, cool, mature guy, and then he's a complete a-hole, in retrospective. So that's kind of weird. I guess they're saying that Barry might be faking it there. Nevertheless, there's discontent amongst the Flashes about what to do. However, our Flash, our heroic Flash, he's still in command. So he's leading the group away. They're headed to get the dreadnought, We see some nice art here from Irv. Irv is a very professional artist. And one of the things you notice about The Flash, and it's one of the titles that survived the DC implosion, is that Irv drew a very modern-looking hero. And this is why, and he also was really kind of a pretty good artist too. So anyway, the Flashes, they're heading toward the Dreadnought. That's the crime tank. Then some of the other Flashes, they're making a nuisance of themselves. And they keep running into each other and they're getting in their way. So it looks like the Dreadnought doesn't actually have to do anything, because the ineptness of the four fraudulent Flashes was enough to kind of defeat, the Flashes themselves. So mature Flash looks like he has an idea. He says the reason why we're getting in each other's way is that we think too much alike. So we follow our instincts, and we all have the same instincts, and one of our instincts is not to communicate with the other one. So there's sort of a little bit of lack of communication with these Flashes. The AI is still following this. And the AI wants to, reverse engineer reality, because he wants his version of science to work. So he's still interfering, but nevertheless, the Flash is holding things together. So then the other Flashes, they're fighting, they're slugging it out. They have various degrees of, shall we say, psychopathic behavior. They're really beating each other up. They're throwing like steel girders at each other. They're walloping each other. So I mean, for some reason, retrospective Flash is a real dick. One of them tries to, I think the good Flash even tries to concussion one of the other Flashes by throwing like a cinder block at him. Holy crap. So anyway, these guys are just going at it. Mature Flash realizes this is futile and that he should try to get their attention and kind of get them to follow him. And they do that. So that's the one thing that Mature Flash has over the others, is that the others will follow him as much as they are fighting against him. They're doing the Superman effect of going around the world, except this time it's like running on the orbit. They're running faster and faster and faster, and it's really funny. Although, again, it's well drawn. And it turns out that eventually at some point the Flashes merge together. So those real jerk elements of Barry, they're back in his body. And the AI sees this and he realizes that he's been defeated basically. And right now he's in damage control. He has to make sure that the master doesn't hear about this. Otherwise, it could mean the end of his existence, because you get one wrong answer, it's over. So anyway, the Dreadnought's still out there, the crime tank. And the crime tank suddenly shows up, and he takes on the Flash. The Flash is feeling pretty confident here at this point. Things started really going his way, and he started kind of figuring out what's going on. So he's attacking the crime tank. The crime tank falls apart, because his karate chops are so powerful at his speed that the Dreadnought couldn't handle it. The two drivers, the two criminals in the Dreadnought, they kind of play it off as, hey, we're just contractors. We were just doing a job we were paid for. We weren't involved in decision making of what this vehicle was doing. They made us do it. Flash isn't buying that. He's saying, F you guys. And he takes them to jail, and what he does is that he just goes at super speed, and the criminals are caught in the, the after effect. So he's taking them to jail that way. So these guys are captured. So Flash has solved a couple of his problems here. We're heading toward the end, and the AI intelligence that was responsible for these issues with the Flash didn't know about this. And all he knew that was his professor, his father-in-law was visiting. So he sees his father-in-law, and he sees the father-in-law interacting with the AI. And it turns out that the professor says that the AI had a nervous breakdown. Something broke in it mentally, and it's kind of now a babbling idiot. The Flash apparently knows everything. So apparently he somehow took the perspective of the reader, and he figured out the whole thing. He says, father-in-law, you wouldn't believe it if you heard it. So anyway, that's the end of the story. The AI device is basically gone cuckoo, talking about conspiracies. That was another thing, they had mentioned conspiracies in this issue. So you kind of got a little bit of an idea that these guys had some idea about where the future was going. I don't know whether we'll reach that future. So again, that was a decent Flash story. Okay, so I'm going to go in. I'm going to look at the letters. I did not read them earlier. These are called flashgrams. And one letter was, they're talking about issue number 213. Oh yeah, it was a reprint issue. So the issue was all reprints, so there's no need to go over the stories. A lot of readers were disappointed that it was all reprints. There were a couple readers that were happy it was reprints because these were stories that they probably would not have seen otherwise. So it's sort of more of people were talking about that. And DC kind of admitted they kind of screwed up because it created a bad customer experience. Anyway, we're going to go into the story that makes this a collectible. This issue is a wall issue. It's because of Neal Adams artwork here. This is the last real great story from Denny O'Neal, Neal Adams, with these two characters. They had done one other story that appeared a few issues later. It was actually the first Neal Adams comic book I ever bought, that particular issue. The story is kind of mediocre compared to how great this story is. This is a great story. Not only from the art, which is amazing, but also the storytelling. This is a Marvel-style storytelling from using DC characters. So if anyone ever wondered what it would be like if the DC characters were kind of developed and used in the same way as the Marvel characters, this is a good issue to read because this reads like a Marvel issue. And it could easily have been Spider-Man with some changes, or Captain America. So anyway, it turns out here that the Green Arrow, he got a challenge from a gang that has been terrorizing the neighborhood. The Green Arrow lives in a somewhat impoverished neighborhood. One, because at this point he had lost his fortune. And two, he wanted to be sort of a man of the people. So he did not let the idea of like living in a, quote, ghetto, which is the language they used at the time, would deter him. So, because a guy like Green Arrow, even with all his money lost, he still had options. He could have, kind of lived with Black Canary. She had a nice house. And I'm sure he could have bothered Hal for staying in that extra bedroom, kind of like Felix and Oscar. Nevertheless, Green Arrow, beautifully drawn here, and he's his own man. So this is where the Hood said they wanted to meet him. So he encounters one of them. He sees that the area is completely darkened, and he said, honestly, somebody with some brains would not be entering here, but I've never been known for brains, so I'm going to enter. So he encounters one of the henchmen, and they're starting to talk it out here about, they've been bad news for the neighborhood, terrorizing good people, and then the bad guy, he drops their plan into action, and they blind him with this huge light that's behind the bad guy. He has special glasses on, so he's not affected by this. One of the thugs comes out with it looks like a steel pipe. Oof, no one be hit with that. He definitely looks taller than Green Arrow. Green Arrow gets belted with it, and apparently that was the second time he got hit in that arm. So he's in a lot of pain. That really makes you wonder why these guys are superheroing, given the amount of discomfort they have to deal with. So because of that swing and hit with the metal pipe, Green Arrow's, it looks like his left arm is not available to him. So he's still able to fight off this gang one by one by one. Green Arrow, the gang members have sunglasses. Green Arrow doesn't, but he's able to turn off the light. He reaches for his bow and arrow, and he just sort of lets one loose on the source of the blinding light, and he hits a bullseye. That's why he uses his scarf, because he never misses with his bow. He's still able to use his bow as a weapon in attacking the gang here. It turns out this was their initial plan, to just basically overwhelm him with numbers, but he overwhelmed them. It turns out the bad guys, the gang, they had a sniper, and the sniper was insurance in case the main plan didn't work, which is kind of interesting. They kind of had a code of ethics there, and they had a sense of honor, because basically unleashing the sniper first probably would have been the best move, but nevertheless they had a sense of honor, and to a degree, and they reached this degree. The sniper's there. Again, beautifully drawn artwork. The coloring is amazing. You get this scene, the sniper is getting closer and closer to Green Arrow as he's kind of taking refuge behind these garbage cans. So Green Arrow decides he's going to go on the offense, and he's going to knock the rifle out of the sniper's hands. So that's sort of like, that was Green Arrow's non-violent way of handling it. But it turns out because of the arm injury, his aim was off, and he hits the sniper with the arrow, and it's the sniper that falls. And again, these beautifully drawn panels, in the way they're cut, you see the Green Arrow kind of seeing the body of the assassin fall to the ground. We see Green Arrow is horrified by what happened. He knows that this guy's dead, and that it was his fuck up. It was his failure. Even though it was understandable, because he had hurt his arm. Anyway, we see Green Lantern here. He shows up, and he's heading to his apartment. And he's stylishly dressed, I should add. But he's doing something here. He's concerned about money. So they're showing that that Hal Jordan might have some money problems issues here, because he's a little behind in his rent. He was a test pilot at one time. He was an insurance agent at one time. This looks like those careers, went by the wayside, and how Jordan has to figure out a way of paying the rent, and he's thinking about that. That's again that's something from Marvel, and so they're making fun of Hal Jordan and his jobs. They're saying, "Oh, look in the want ads." Tell you what I'm gonna do, gonna put it in the want ads. I'll see if there's anything in the want ads for a guy of my resume. How she gets a call from a female, and she mentions that something happened to their friend, and it's understood by Hal that she's talking about Oliver Queen, the Green Arrow, and she's desperately concerned over the phone here. Getting some beautifully drawn artwork. So then it turns out Black Canary, who's on one end of the phone, she's describing what she came across with Oliver Queen. Apparently he had left her a note saying this is goodbye forever. So what happened in that alleyway, we see it really affected Green Arrow. And she's calling Hal for help, basically Green Lantern help. And Hal understands that, and he gets into costume. He powers up his ring, and again, mentioning he still has trouble. And here's where it kind of gets a little bit of Marvel, where Hal is thinking about past adventures that he had had. He's talking about how maybe the Green Arrow has his confidence has been a little shaky since they had failed to save a character named Isaac in issue number 89. That was the last of the Green Lantern, Green Arrow comics. And so they made reference to that. And he also made reference to the drug issues earlier with like Speedy becoming addicted to heroin. So again, this is something you usually saw in Marvel. You never really saw this in DC. And this was intentional. And that was just because DC, they had rotating writers. So, you might have 3 different writers writing stories for one title. And this guaranteed that the production was always going to happen, that there were never going to be any delays or missteps that usually occurred with Marvel, because sometimes they would miss issues and they would get hit with these huge fines, so they would have to use fill-ins sometimes. But the thing is, this system kind of robbed any idea of continuality, because one writer really didn't know what the other writer was going to do. So they could never really carry on sort of the consequences that the Marvel characters would have, because the comics were just like a serial. So anyway, this is like Marvel style writing. See how Jordan he goes into the apartment. The apartment is definitely stylish for its time. And let's see, I'm not really interested in the ads too much. How Jordan sees the arrows were broken. He sees his bow was broken. Green Lantern recognizes this as serious because he knows the amount of pride that Oliver Queen has in his archery, and this is his crime-fighting equipment, and he really values this equipment, obviously because he puts his life on the line using it. So Green Lantern knows this is serious, and he sees that his costume has been shredded. So he notices this is very passionate destruction of specific objects, and Green Lantern doesn't know what to make of it. However, there's an event going on outside that he notices, and it sounds like kind of a tussle. And it turns out that there's 3 young men who's kind of looming over this smaller middle-aged man. And Green Lantern is seeing this, trying to figure out what was going on. Now here's again some Marvel type writing here. And it even kind of has like a Marvel type of panel where you see the a close up of Green Lantern, and he's thinking about issue number 76, back when it turned out that he had helped unwittingly a slumlord who was very unpopular with the people there. So, and Hal felt embarrassed by that encounter, that he felt he looked like a fool. So he doesn't want to make the same mistake twice. So he's just letting things play out at this point. And again, I think that's kind of like a more Marvel type development. However, it turns out the hoods that are surrounding this middle-aged man, they're getting physical now. And they're the ones who started it. So at this point, Hal was like, listen, I got to get into action. I'll worry about the morality of who's right and who's wrong later on, but I got to stop this fight. So it turns out that the guys are career criminals because they recognize Green Lantern as a friend of Green Arrow. So then one of them pulls a gun on him, on Green Lantern. So at this point, Green Lantern knows, okay, these are the bad guys. So he does a trick with the gun, makes it too large for the gunman to hold. So the gun is kind of useless. The three gunmen, these are just regular street thugs. They are immediately captured in a ring of a chained ring. But apparently they keep on running, so they don't realize they're being held in place by this power ring. He brings them closer and closer to the building. The reason they got into the tussle with the middle-aged man was the middle-aged man thought they were stealing something from the building. But apparently they weren't stealing something from the building. It was something, they were doing something way worse. So the other man's pointing this out. Green Lantern, he's bringing them into the building. These guys don't want to go into that building. And finally they give up the reason. They were trying to hide the reason why they didn't want to go in, but now they have to say something. They said, listen, we planted a bomb in there. And Green Lantern's like, what? He's really mad at these guys, and he's saying a bomb, and then suddenly there's this huge explosion of a townhouse. And once again, the art is so beautifully drawn. And around this time, there were American groups who were bombing specific targets at this time. When I grew up, there was a terrorist group who kind of targeted New York, and this was not really unknown to people who were living this reality. In 1972. This is the first part of a three-part arc. At this point, Denny O'Neal and Neal Adams, they kind of diverged in terms of issues because while they had a lot of agreements, they also kind of disagreed a lot. And because of that, they decided to do a more personal story with this arc. So I'm going to talk about the next two issues. Also review The Flash. So anyway, again, if you get a chance to read this, please do. It's such a beautiful comic book. So anyway, that's my review of Flash number 217, and I hope to have more reviews up soon. Bye.